Andy Pants here with a technique today that I'm going to show you. Have you ever wanted to have a large piece of embossed paper, but the little embossing folders are just too small? Well, I have a way to show you how I did on my layout this month. The embossing that looks like it's down on the edges. It's a faux embossing technique. Maybe not faux because we really are embossing, but it makes it look like the larger paper, like you've embossed the larger paper underneath when in all actuality you've just embossed pieces. So we're going to use another piece of cardstock, and I'm just going to show you the embossing technique for the back. So for this technique, I like to use the Coordinations cardstock, so I'm going to use some of the coordinations that came with this month's kit. And the first thing we have to do is we have to cut it down to size to fit in our big shop. Before that, what I do is I cut a frame. So this is the frame that goes on the outside of my layout. And this is just the wasted piece from the center. I'll show you the back of this one. So you can see how it's a cutout. So now that we have our centerpiece, we're going to want to cut this to fit inside the embossing folder. And I have chosen the Sizzix. It's one of the Tim Holtz texture fades. It's the patchwork one. How wide is this? So we're going to cut it just a hair bigger than 4 inches. And then what I did for mine was I ran it through on both ends. And then you're just going to take the embossed top of our paper, and we're going to take our distressing tool, and you're just going to sand to get that coordinations to come through. So when you have it distressed to your likeness, go ahead and take your paper and decide where you would like to adhere this, and just use your scissors and cut out chunks of it where you know you're going to want pieces showing through. I really like my corners. So I'm going to glue mine down at least on my upper corner. Kind of a creature of habit. Do not use Fabri-Tac. It's way too thick to punch through. Use a mono adhesive or a tape runner. That's what I used on my green layout. I really like those birds, so I'm going to cut those birds off and use them elsewhere. And it doesn't matter how random your pieces are, because they're just going to be peeking out. So honestly, if you have a pattern that's similar all over, for example, the Sizzix polka dots, or if you have a piece that's completely random, like this one, or like the bingo card, any sort of really busy pattern will work just fantastic with this. You won't even be able to tell that it's not all the same piece. Try to make sure that you're lining them up right against the edges of your paper. And when you're all through gluing them on, go ahead and take your distressing tool, and especially this piece, because it's freehand cut, it's not quite even. So I'm going to really want to make sure that I get that sanded so it blends in better with the edge of the paper. And just go ahead and distress the entire piece of cardstock. Okay. Another couple of techniques to try to make it look like it's all one big giant piece. Get some stamps. What you're going to want is like a script stamp. Works absolutely perfect for this. Okay. Or a large pattern stamp. Something that you're going to be able to really see against that background. So I'm going to use this damask. And I also have a smaller damask. That was sitting right here. There she be. I'm going to use the smaller damask and this script all together. And for this page, I want black and white, so I'm going to use black. The other thing you could do is you can layer your stamps. On the edge of the other page, I did layer some script behind some other stuff, and I really like the way that that turned out. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to stamp over the edges of where your embossed pieces meet with the paper. So in essence, you're hiding the fact that there's an edge there and that it's not all one piece. If it's hanging over the inside edge, that's okay. It's going to be behind our distressed and layered papers. So you're not hardly even going to notice it. Your stamping doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be square, and it doesn't always have to be on the edge. You could put it elsewhere also. I got a little bit of glue. I overglued the area. It's probably better to actually glue the piece as it's getting put on, but okay. One more technique to help this blend together so that you can't tell that they're separate pieces is to take your edge punch. So once our ink is dry, which I love the random edge punching anyways, and this just kind of gives that an extra little added dimension. So if you punch right over the seam of where the two are, it's kind of thick. So get it seated in there. There it goes. It's actually easier with a little bit bigger punch than this one. This one's kind of delicate. So you can see this edge right here. You can't hardly tell where that seam is. And once you get your paper over it, it blends in even better. And now when you layer your layout over this, your pattern over this, it looks like you actually have an embossed sheet of 12 by 12 cardstock, when in fact you've really just pieced together. And the final product, it's a little more difficult to see the stamping on here, but there's script stamping on all my corners, and you can see the various punches that I've used here, here, and here. Thanks for watching.